Good evening, Shuffle Bus Riders. What is up? It's your boy Jesse, back here as always with my good friend Neil and two very special guests. One is Commander Cody from Star Wars. Welcome, Commander Cody, or AKA Fizzlesticks from the Charge Play podcast. And then none other than Brian Jurch, as you know, as Jurch from the Charge Play podcast as well. So we've got a couple of other content creators joining us tonight for kind of a panel-style conversation about all things Solforge. We're going to go through... Good evening, Shuffle Bus Riders. What is up? It's your boy Jesse.
Wow.
Yep, had that one on the back end. That's the way it works when I'm like trying to grab links. Welcome to live. You never get it right. So, so we're going to go through a bunch of things. So, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to talk about the news. Obviously, we're going to kind of follow an actual structure because that's what Jurch is extremely good at, right? So he's going to help guide us through. We're going to play some of the games that you hear on the Charge Plated. And then also we're going to open this thing up. We want you all in chat to ask us questions. This is a chance for you guys to kind of pick the brains of Jurch and Fizzlesticks. And you get to pick our brains all the time. Maybe you don't want to hear from Neil and I ever again, but at the end of the day, we've got two guys that you normally don't get a chance to interact with live on stream with us tonight, and that's kind of the whole point of this, is for everybody to get a chance to interact with these great content creators. If you haven't followed these guys and you haven't been listening to their content for Solforge, are you even playing this game? Let's be real here. So so Jurch, Cody, Fizzlesticks. I'm gonna probably call you Cody, dude. I'm sorry. It's just. That's how I know you. It's gonna
take your pick. Either one works.
It's gonna take all pod for me just to get that right. But welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's super awesome to have you here, and I'm really excited for this episode. So this has been in the works for quite some time. So it's pretty exciting to have you here.
Yeah, Neil, Jesse, thank you for having us on. We love the stuff that you guys do, and it's just great that we get to do a little crossover event, and we've got the three good-looking ones on camera, and then I guess Fizzlesticks decided he was too cool for us to enjoy his face.
The problem is I know what Cody looks like, and that is just not true. The man is handsome. That's all there is to
it.
It.
Thank you. Wow. I don't think I've ever gotten that compliment in my life. So we're off to a good start. You're trying to butter me up.
I am, man. That's why I can get a few T-ball hits here, before we get to the really heavy hitting issues.
Yeah, so. No, I'm just going to get clocked with some take about how all of my thoughts on the meta are wrong in about 15 minutes. Buttering me up first.
Join the club, man. We all have that happen. So it's if you make hot takes, you're bound to get a couple wrong. that's just the beauty of hot takes. So and I'm wrong a lot. Like Neil and I talk about that a lot. But
I'm wrong never. So
balances
out.
It does balance out. That's for sure. So. But yeah, so let's get things started. Jurch, you've got a little bit of news. You want to share the news tonight with the team?
Well, first of all, thank you for that. I like just kind of going over the major events that could be on the horizon for people, and also plugging local events, and especially this time of year is store championships. So that's definitely something we can touch on tonight. But the biggest one on the horizon is Origins Game Fair, and that's happening the weekend of June 24th. So it's coming up real quick in Columbus, Ohio. And that Saturday, the 24th at 10 a.m. is the championship event, which is sealed this time. That's different from the previous couple of events where it's been constructed, So have any of you thought about, are you able to make it out? I know, to speak very easily for Fizzlesticks and myself, we're not able to go to this one, but I really feel like we're missing out on such a fun sealed championship event.
So no, I'm not making Origins. I don't think Neil is either. But
I'm not either, unfortunately.
but I will say this: I've been to Origins a bunch, and it is truly a gamers con. Like if you've gone to Gen Con a bunch, Gen Con is kind of a really crazy weekend of board gaming. There's just a million things going on. It's really hard to focus in on a lot of stuff. Origins is really this really chill, laid back opportunity to just game and get to meet a lot of the sizable publishers inside the gaming space. So I really highly encourage, if you've never been to Columbus, it's an amazing town, and I really highly encourage people to go to Columbus and Origins. It's a fantastic con just in general. So I do feel like I'm missing out a little bit after attending a number of Origins as well.
Yeah, I think I'm not gonna be able to go, which is unfortunate. I didn't know it was sealed, but that makes me more disappointed that I will miss it because I think that that's great. Do you know if the one in UK was sealed or was that also constructed?
That was constructed because that was like the first real big event that they've been able to have over there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really good that they have sealed added to the series.
Yeah. And was this set 2 sealed?
We can't just let Greg go win it again with Dark Force.
No, we gotta let him because then the deck goes golden. It's out of everybody's mind until World Championship season.
It's not out of silver level events if it's gold.
Oh, that's true. That's true. You can still play it, right? No. If it's silver, I did think you could play a level up. So if you have a silver event and you have a gold deck, I don't think the gold deck can participate in a silver event.
It
really?
can.
It's actually the opposite. Yeah, it gets 2 buys potentially.
That's right, 2.
Really?
Yes.
But you can't play a silver event. You can't play a silver deck in a bronze event, right?
Correct. So we talked to Shadow.
We should unpack that.
Right. Yeah. So we talked to Shadow about this last week. This is getting reworked. They're reworking the system. They're changing it. The intention behind it was solid. The execution, not as much.
Sure.
But the idea was that, okay, getting a bronze deck to silver is like, hey guy, quit playing that at your locals. It's a good deck.
Right.
And then the idea of getting something to gold was supposed to be more of like a reward or something like, hey, this is a top tier deck, which is why like, okay, this deck doesn't need to play the first couple rounds of a silver event because it's shown its prowess. It doesn't need to kind of go through those ranks anymore.
Wow.
But then that has weird kind of discontinuity issues where, all right, we've proven that a deck is too good to play at a bronze event. It's won 3 silver events, and there was like, I don't know, 2 of them so far this year. So if something finishes top 2 in every single silver event for a whole year, in my opinion, it should probably not be allowed to play in those events anymore, because it's proven that it can take down all those contenders. Let's leave it up for some larger tournament. And that's my take, but it does sound like they're reworking it from multiple angles, not only what is allowed in what events, but also the aspect of what you need to earn them. It's going to be more of a scalable slide of how many points you earn towards the deck based on the prestige of the event, but also based on how many people showed up to the event. So top 2 at an 80-person event is obviously much more difficult than top 2 at a 4-person event. And the points will show that in the future.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes sense, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I get the intent, what you're saying, but man, that's a significant advantage in a competitive level event.
I think we talked about it 2 weeks ago about like just shortly about what the purpose of the like renown and level up system is, and I think that maybe it was Shadow that said that, but when Jurch was describing it, the like get this deck out of your locals, like your casual games, is like level 1. And that was, kind of like what I had centered on as the main purpose of the thing. And I think it's working kind of, but then this sounds better to me because, we kind of had a little bit of your leveled up deck gets buys controversy at Indy. It turned out not to actually matter, I don't think, but it goes from a step where like we're worried about whether you're pushing casuals out of a local to how do we incentivize a player to take it to the next level after that.
Right.
So it needs to have that upside also. So it's probably good. I mean, the big thing that
on Gaming's in chat with us tonight, it sounds like he's saying the incoming renown reward. I'm glad that they're addressing that. So yeah, I think all in all, I think all in all, renown as a whole needs to be looked at, and probably I hope that they implement some scalability to renown too. So like if an event is larger, whether that's online or in person, i.e. you go to a Gen Con and you play in a constructed event at a Gen Con and there's 50 participants and you win that should probably reward more renown than just 1 point of renown in your respected level that you play at, because winning a 50-person event is very difficult. And it only gets harder as events scale up, right, in size. So if an event gets larger and larger, it becomes more and more. So I do hope that they address that in that renown rework as well. I know that they've talked about it, but I don't know if they're going to actually So that's one of those things.
A lot of these things are things that Shadow said, all right, I did raise these concerns when the system was being developed, but it was one of those things of, let's see how it goes for a year. Let's play it out, get feedback. And it seems like there's enough feedback now that they see the issues with it. But on top of that, you have things like Shadow was at Fuse Fest and it was 80 some odd people. And he's like, look at this event. Top 8, all those decks should be silver. That at an event that size, you really should be doing something like that versus like top 2 get a third of the way to silver. Like it's kind of laughable compared to some local that happens, maybe twice a week or once a week with 4 people. That's not the same scale, clearly. So I agree. I was very happy to hear that they are reworking it. And it sounds like they're changing the system to better reflect, again, just how difficult it would be to obtain whatever that top tier is. And sounds like expanding outside of potentially just the top 2, getting some points depending on how big the event is.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, like top 8 on an event that size, for example, is an accomplishment. And if you're on the bubble, right? Like I was a bubble player for top 8 in that event at one point. And, if you're on the bubble for that, it incentivizes you to play out your last round just to see if your tiebreakers work out in your favor, right? For a top 8 cut and some renown. Whereas, like for me, I knew I was a bubble player and knew that whether I won or lost, it didn't matter because I wasn't going to be quote unquote in the finals. So I chose to drop and watch the finals. It was more interesting to me to watch the finals than it was to participate and play another game that had virtually no meaning in just other than where my final placement was in the event. So if I knew that there was a chance for some renown, that would incentivize me to stay in for that final round too and see if I can make that bubble cut. So yeah, I think it's a good fit for big events like that, and I hope that they continue to do that. I hope that they think about it on stuff where they're doing top cuts in general, like where their top cut dividers are, because I think that's as somebody that's run now. We're gonna have our 3rd tournament here, Solforge tournament that we've ran. And they've all been fairly sizable. This is going to be our smallest one, the sealed event, which makes sense. I think having a top cut really does. There should be some sort of reward for still making it through that Swiss round and getting into the quote unquote, final section of the single elimination section of the tournament. So renown seems like a really good way to do that if it's a scalable renown or something.
Well, quick side note then, Jesse, that's an opportunity for you all to be plugging your sealed event. You just kind of breezed over it.
Well, the registration's closed, so nobody can sign up anymore. We're going.
How many people are in it? Like,
sure.
Who are some of the highlights? Come on.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to single anybody out on the highlight side. There's definitely some heavy hitters that are playing in this tournament, but it is all sealed. It's going to be set 1 sealed. As an added value, like. I was going to use I have a bunch of starter sets, but I've also got a bunch of booster kits. And because it ended up being a little bit smaller event, those folks that had the faith to sort of sign up and try this with us and see how it works, I'm going to turn that all into Kickstarter boosters instead. So everybody's getting Kickstarter decks out of it. So,
nice.
So that I didn't want to put that out there publicly because if the last week it blew up and we had 20 some players, I didn't have enough of them to do it, but with 9 players, I have enough of them to do it. So I'm going to give a little added value to our 9 players that had faith to try this event with us and see how it went. So, so we'll see. I'm excited to watch that. That is all going to be live streamed this Saturday. Is it this Saturday?
Nice.
Yeah, it's this Saturday.
It is this Saturday, yeah.
Crazy. June is flying by,
Is it
man.
this Saturday?
I think it's this Saturday. I don't know, man.
God.
Yeah, so we'll kick that tournament off. First round of Swiss will happen at 11 a.m. Central. That's noon Eastern. We'll go through, it looks like, I think 5 rounds with 9 players, or 4 rounds. 4 rounds with 9 players, and I don't remember if there's a cut on that or not. I'll have to go back and look and see. But long story short, yeah, I'm really excited to see what the seal pools look like and what people choose to run out of them coming out of set 1 in particular, because I think there's some folks in the community that believe certain things are just automatically going to be overpowered in this kind of event, and so I'll be really curious to see if something changes in that. It may not, we don't know. That's why we do it, is to find out for sure, not to hypothesize on it. So yeah. We're excited to do our first seal event. And I hope to do more of them because it's been fun to.
I'm glad that we got it to fire. I but like always, everybody's waits till the last minute. So
yeah, I think 4 hours before
we went from
were
3 players to
firing.
9 like that Friday afternoon.
Yeah, like in the last 4 hours of signups, that's how we got to firing the event, because we required a minimum of 8 players to make the event.
Well, I'll bring up one thing about the people on the roster real quick, and that is that neither of you two are in it.
Yeah,
it's pre-release weekend for Lord of the Rings Magic the Gathering set, so I'm working literally all weekend.
Oof.
Oh, wait, at your store?
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you see the bounty for the One Ring?
I haven't seen what it's got to lately, because I just want to be able to cash that check and then write whatever numbers on it they need to at that point, because I'm going to be the one that opens it.
It's 2 million.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's insane for a piece of cardboard. That's insane.
I mean, you saw what happened in the documentary, right?
I know. Yeah.
Like, wars were fought over it.
I know.
I'm sorry, documentary?
Yeah. The Lord of the Rings movies.
So, Ant Gaming adding, Sealed is much different beast and constructed, though. Can't force colors, really. Radahai is saying, and I apologize if I didn't get that right, Radahai. Really sorry to miss out on this one. Hope it's a great success and happens again. We're definitely going to do it again. It really comes down to, in order for us to be able to make it work, I have to be able to find product at a discounted price. And I got to remove my product from my inventory, quote unquote, that I have now. I'm not official business, but I have enough surplus product that I can't justify going out and buying more of that until I've sort of got our existing inventory consumed, and that's done through our events where we're giving away boosters and stuff like that. So I've got a little ways to go on set 1, and then I can start looking at set 2, maybe set 3 for some Seal product. Well,
and this is a big deal, because this is one of the first like sealed digital events, because you can't just like pull the random ones that are on TTS. Is Jesse, you're doing like the behind the scenes, all that legwork for that.
There's a stack of cards next to me right now that you can't see. So,
yeah,
yes, that's true.
So you are like the canary in the coal mine for this, and I can imagine all the extra work that this is taking.
Yeah, it's definitely a strain on my time too.
Oh, he's a jokester. He's got the jokes, everybody. Yeah, no, Carl's saying he's looking forward to the Seal tournament as well. Yeah, it's if I don't come up for air, you'll know what happened. But I'm glad it wasn't a 30-player event in some cases, just because this gives us a chance to really test the waters at a smaller scale and see if it's something that can be scaled, and is a week's timeline long enough for that, right? Like, is it long enough to get all the logistics put together? So the only thing Neil's going to have to do next week on Saturday is just like, here's 4 players, send them their links right now. So
yeah.
So each player will get 4 separate deck links. They'll be able to claim the decks immediately in the system, and then they'll have 15 minutes to build from that. So we'll see how it goes. So,
well, and Jesse, I'm gonna actually argue with Ankh here, as somebody who has forced Alloy and Tempest for every sealed event I've ever played. I think you absolutely can force colors.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say you're going to have success, but you absolutely can force colors in this. And I have forced that every single time because I love playing those 2 colors.
I think in both sealed events that I have played in, because I won a local sealed event for the pre-release for set 2, for the release of set 2. And then I played obviously at Fuse Fest, and in both of those, I ended up playing the same colors. I ended up playing Alloy and Utera in both of those. I mean, it's just the way the pools worked out. I didn't specifically try to do it, but it was just my 2 strongest halves were in those colors from the pool that I opened, which is kind of strange. Usually it's not that way, I don't think. But
I do think Utera has some really heavy hitters for sealed. I mean, just Jurch and I have talked about this a lot. I mean, big bodies work well in sealed.
Yep.
And Utera's got a decent amount of those. So I do think that's worked well. And I'd be lying if I said I hadn't lost a couple games against a Krogus in a sealed event, because it feels like they don't end early. You see the cycle 3 more often because it's not finely tuned decks that are just designed to burn someone out. So yeah, no, I think Alloy and Utera would be really fun and sealed for sure. And that's one of the beauties of sealed, is that I think your playbook's a lot bigger in sealed, and the different strategies that you see are larger, just because people are playing with, 4 random decks that they just opened up and trying to find the best combo between them. So I hope that Origins is a great success and we see some really cool strategies coming out there. And then in your sealed event as well, I hope we see some really cool things and a little bit of a mix up, I guess, in some of the maybe more stale strategies that we've seen recently at the top events.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the real question, right? Is the game more refreshing to play in a sealed event than a constructed event when the quote unquote meta has been solved to some degree? So we have gone down a bunny trail here, and I think we've got through exactly 2 news items, and I know Jurch is over there going, guys, let me get through this. So I'm going to send it back to him.
No, I'm good. I have been meditating and making that things are not going to go 100% as I plan.
Yeah.
And that we're live, so I can't edit my responses anyway. So we are golden.
All right. I'm glad.
What do you guys think the turnout for Origins is going to look like? Knowing that it's a sealed event, knowing that it's this obviously like a much larger con than either of the CG cons. And I don't know what size.
20. I'm hoping 20. I have no idea what the sign up is right now, if it's, what it looks like, but I'm hoping 20. I'm going to be honest. I have no idea what the local scene in Ohio looks like or the surrounding areas. So I think that has a huge impact on it. I know like Indy and then Gen Con, there's a decent community there. So because just in that general Indianapolis area, so it seems like they have like a decent turnout for most of those. Jurch, are you laughing at Onk's response?
No, I'm laughing at the list. We've got 6 people who have signed up for it, and everybody's favorite tuber, Tater Tot Eat a Lot, has a team named Rampaging Spuds.
I just picked up. If you didn't see, Joel sold most of his excess decks, and that included his Shuffle Bus winning blue half, and I bought it from him. This week, so.
The one with the Sonic Pulse or whatever?
With the Sonic Burst stabilizing Sonic in it, yeah.
Whatever the hell that card is.
Yeah. So we'll see. I don't have his other half that went with it that had the Nova, but
I'll wait until after we talk about the rest of the events here. But
yeah, so one of the
I gotta
things,
ask you guys about that card.
Does anybody know how much the event at Origins costs to participate in? Because I think that could be a potential limiting factor if it's really expensive.
I also have that information available. It says $45.
Oh my god.
That's gonna hurt numbers.
I think because it's a sealed and then also a championship.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's full retail plus your standard basically
$15 entry fee.
yeah, UC fee.
I just think that's tough. That's a tough number, because here's where I think they had an opportunity potentially at an Origins. Sealed's a perfect new player friendly format, right? So if you were exposing new players to Solforge, you could say, $20, jump in, play, $25, whatever retail is on this. Jump in and play and have a good time, and everybody's kind of got the same opportunity or whatever. Obviously, that's not true entirely, but it's 45 is a big ask for a new player to say, "Hey, commit a bunch of time at a con and spend $45 on top of the hundreds of dollars you've already spent." So I think it's gonna limit the player participation to those folks that actually care about an Ultimate Championship and care about Solforge at a competitive level. But we'll see. Maybe they'll pick up some new players anyways. Maybe some people will cross that barrier line and say, you know what, I want to do it. Let's do it. So I hope.
Well, and this is, Jesse, that's a good point, because this is just kind of on the business end of things. Some things that have confused me with the Stoneblade is, for something like this, just as a business, I'm not saying sell it at cost, but there's a large range between your cost and what the retail set price
Absolutely.
is. There's an ocean in between there, because it touches a distributor hands, and in selling a product, anytime somebody touches a product, there's an additional markup, right? So
Absolutely.
There's 2 or 3 markups in between the shipment that gets to Stoneblade and the consumer's hands.
Correct.
So why not at least take one of those notches out, right? If you're giving it directly to the consumer, in order to get more participation. And then, like Neil said, I would sell it at cost, right? Just throw whatever your at cost is, cover your cost for the thing, and get more people into the game.
Absolutely.
And I think that makes a lot of sense.
I wholly agree with
Wizards would do, I don't know if they still do this because I've been out of it for a while, but when I was TOing for Hobbytown, Wizards would do sealed events below cost sometimes. Like they just
it's marketing, right? It's pure marketing dollars.
It's marketing, and because it's not and I don't know if Stoneblade has this capability yet, but they would send tournament like packages, or if they ran the event, because I don't know if they have their own booth at Origins or whatever. I assume they do, and they're going to bring product there anyway. Then all those steps you talked about are just cut out of the system. They're just bringing it straight from their warehouse with their other stuff they're taking to the Origins, and like you said, it's marketing, gets players into the game, it does all this stuff. I like $45 is
so.
That's tough for like a walk-up event.
As a former small publisher who actually was a sponsor of Origins once, and had a regular 10x10 booth in the and gaming space to host events for a card game. In fact, I did all of these things at Origins for my product. The retail sales side, when you're at the booth, needs to stay retail, because otherwise you're going to make a lot of retailers very mad, right? Like, you've got to keep your MSRP intact for the purposes of selling your product at the booth. But when you get into events and this sort of specialization of like, we want to grow the game, you're actually supporting the retailer at a local level. If you can get somebody hooked at Origins, and then they go home and they say, I want to buy more of this, and I want to play more of this. And now the retailer is the beneficiary of that marketing. Jurch is giving exploding hands for those folks that are just listening to us instead of watching us. But, I think that I just think this is an opportunity. The game's so new. I think this whole first year was an opportunity for them to truly use the events at big cons to expand the player base and really grow the player base and get as much exposure as possible. And we'll see how Gen Con works out. I mean, I'm sure Gen Con will work out better, and that's probably their plan with Gen Con, because they have a bunch of sealed events at Gen Con and a storyline event and all these things, right? So, but Origins seems like it was an opportunity to hit a different crowd that sort of tends to avoid Gen Con. Like, I know people that I've talked to that went to Origins that were like, we come to this con because we get to play games here. Whereas when we go to Gen Con, everything's so crazy, we never get to play any games.
Speaking of Gen Con, Jesse, wow, now that's a professional transition.
You're welcome.
There. Gen Con, right, August, beautiful. August 3rd through the 6th. Those first 2 days, which initially kind of struck me as odd, is going to be the World Championship event, where entry is both half decks that you're bringing in have to be silver. And then the next 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, I feel like it's kind of more of a celebration style, because that's where it's going to be the storyline event. And I've tried to work my back channels in getting any spoilers we can for that storyline event. But a lot of it's predicated on the storyline events that's going to be happening at Origins around Crux Cobalt. And but I'm so excited for not only the world's competitive side, but then especially that storyline. Like, that's just going to be a blast. I had a dream the other night, and these types of dreams are less on the predictive and more on the crazy side of the scale. But that there was a large contingency of us that were at some sort of convention, which now I can only assume is Gen Con. And it must have been for this sealed event. And there was set 3 that we were playing, that we were opening and playing. It was frantic. The timeline would be a little bit early, because if they're going to be doing every 6 months, it would be September-ish. But I had a dream the other night, and then that was part of it. So,
well, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. You could do it in the same way that Fuse Fest was done.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so they've set a precedent at some level. Like, Fuse Fest was early to the release of Set 2, right? And the folks that participated at Fuse Fest got Set 2 product, what was it, 6 weeks-ish in front of the actual release? I don't remember what the actual timeline, maybe it was longer than that even. But the reality of it, I think that's a perfect opportunity to get people excited for Set 3 and talking about Set 3. And, Gen Con is the time to announce all your new and exciting toys, right? So I would not be surprised if the surprise of the storyline event is it's a Set 3 storyline. I would not be shocked by that at all. And I'd be very excited, because I'm planning to be there to play this. So, wow. Yeah, But if it's not, I'll have fun in Set 2. It's great. I love playing Set 2.
And Jurch, I had the same reaction initially, that I was surprised that the World Championship was a Thursday, Friday, and then the storyline was Saturday, Sunday. But if you remember the last year, the storyline event was a larger event than the first, I forget what they called it, pre-release championship or something like that. It was the first time that the winner got their face on a card and all of that stuff, that they ended up basically rolling out a similar prize package for the ultimate championships moving forward. But that was a smaller event than the storyline event. And I think Stoneblade is seeing that, they have a good concept here for those storyline events, and people are really excited for them. So I'm guessing, decide to put that on the more favorable days of Saturday and Sunday versus the World Championship, which is more restrictive and likely, not likely, definitely more difficult for people to get into.
Yeah. Well, to push back on that a little bit, my experience with Con of the North, remember when you showed up for some of that Fizzlesticks, is there was so much more energy earlier on and in those days. And then Sunday, when I had the constructed championship going on, most people had left. Like, they weren't able to stay till Sunday afternoon and evening. So then I learned that you don't want to be having your showcase event buttressing up to the end of the convention, because you're going to lose a lot of people that have either lost steam or physically can't stay there, that they made their travel plans to go back home. So I know whenever I'm going to be at a convention or multiple day events, when I'll be putting on stuff, I'm not going to put my, silver tuna, the coup de grace. I'm not going to put that on the last day as the end thing, as I might put it more towards the middle or towards the front end, when you're getting a lot of excitement and buzz and then new people that could just be walking in for it. So I'll let you all speculate on if there is any rhyme or reason to the 2 days or to the two events being scheduled how they are.
No, I think it makes sense. Like, when I was scheduling with Origins, we did one of our first big constructed tournaments for that card game at Origins. Like, it was our first opportunity to do that. And their event coordinator was 100% like, you need to do this on the front of the con, don't do it on the back of the con. Because you're to your point, there are people that choose to come into the con for the first couple of days, see as much as possible, and then take off and go home because they got to go back to work on Monday or whatever, and they want a day off on Sunday before they do that. I mean, so they make it a long weekend, but they don't want to get home late Sunday night and immediately go to work. There are people that are like that. So you're right. If you look at con attendance as a whole and when they look at like the turnstiles and who walks through the door, the con attendance is always down on the Sunday. It's always lower. Just inevitably is. So
my speculation would be that it's just their, like, and I've never run anything at a con. I haven't been to a big con that starts on a Thursday, but I would think that Saturday is like the money day for the new player grabbing opportunity, because and these are two very different events, right? Like the World Championships event is a $50 entry for a constructed event that you have to have played the game prior to enter.
Not just played at one event.
The way that they make it seem is that they want it to be somewhat exclusive to the best players in the game up to this point. And they're hoping, again, speculation, they're hoping that these players will travel for that. So the day that that's on doesn't matter, because those players are going to come anyway because they want to be there. Mm-hmm. And then to your storyline event that has the potential to grab more new players, to be more casual, more fun, more accepting of a larger event, like maybe that should start on a Friday, but I think Saturday is probably the big day that you get the most traffic of players that are not there specific for your game.
So I'll ask this question to you guys, and Cody, you can answer it first. Are you guys planning to go home on Monday after Gen Con? Or are you going home Sunday night?
I am planning on flying back as late Sunday that I can.
Yeah,
that is, or flying or driving back. I haven't decided at that point. I'm still looking at flights and whatnot. But yeah, sure. I'm looking to get at as late on Sunday as possible. But I do want to be there for the World Championship. So I mean, probably going to be coming in late Wednesday and mm-hmm. taking 2 days off work for the event.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's if you're looking at Solforge events in particular, I think that's the best plan, right? You're going to want to get as early as you possibly can, and you're going to want to leave as late as you possibly can as well. And whether you're flying or driving, that will have an impact on how you choose to do that, obviously. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't decided. Depending on some other things we don't have the answer to right now, I may be driving because I may have to be bringing some things. So we'll see what happens. But if it doesn't work out that way, then I'll fly in the same way. I'll fly in late Wednesday night, fly out late Sunday night, and that'll be what we do. Or I do. We still got to figure out hotels. It's a mess right now.
It is a mess.
So, okay. So, Ankit had added in chat too, just to touch base on the sealed again just for a moment, that he thinks seals should give more opportunity for walk-ins. So I think that Origins, the Ultimate Championship at Origins feels maybe just a little wrong. But going back to Gen Con, I think there's going to be some really exciting stuff at Gen Con for this game in general. And whether that's just a Set 3 preview or whether that's a Set 3 event, we'll see. But the thing that you can keep in mind is if the product is supposed to release a month later, like 4 weeks later, then it is very easy for a Stoneblade to air freight a small amount of product for a specific event like this. And they know they're going to limit it to 64 players, right? I think that's what the event invites, like the event sign-up sheet has on it is 64 players.
Again, they're going to have a booth or something, right? Like,
yeah,
they're either going to fly or they're going to drive and they're going to take product. And it just seems so easy for them to just like.
But I'm just saying logistically, Set 3, it wouldn't be impossible for Set 3 to be here and be at Gen Con if it's a month away on the release.
We've been talking about like the possibility of Set 3 being legal for that tournament.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to happen now because we haven't had any inkling that it's, going to be there on time. But there was a non-zero chance that it was just available by then.
So, but before we get to Gen Con, there's the largest Stoneblade digital event coming up. So we should talk about that and the folks that are going to participate in that. And I haven't seen the event list yet for that game or for that tournament, but we're talking about the League of Champions. Do you want to break us down on that, Jurch?
Sure, I'd love to.
Yeah.
Man, Jesse,
did you see the face of panic as you realized it was not in chronological order on the show notes?
I did. I did. I did tee it up, but I didn't tee it up in the order of the show notes. So he had to work through that one. I'm sorry.
I just trusted that we would never talk about it ever again.
Yeah, no, I'll get you back. I promise, man.
Well, so to circle back to Gen Con, at least the event listing, a little behind the scenes information that I have is I think they took that official posting for Gen Con down because when they originally posted the Gen Con one like weeks or months ago, they've done like system updates to a lot of the technical computer programming stuff behind the scenes that then wasn't pushed out to events that were created prior to that shift. So I think because they're trying to make sure that anything related to buys or opponent win percentage or all that stuff is 100% ironed out. So I think that's why they took that off, because last time I checked, which wasn't today, so this is bad reporting by me, but I don't think that you can find the Gen Con event.
I was just trying to search it.
Okay.
I haven't looked. And I couldn't find it.
I hadn't looked either, so this is the beauty of life.
If I don't show up to any like events tomorrow or nobody can find me, you'll know what happened.
Russia came for you. The Russians got him. Sorry, Cody, you're on your own.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
That's the end of the podcast. Right there.
My replacement already lined up.
I love it.
I made myself incredibly replaceable. So anyways, that's why you probably can't find Gen Con yet, is some of that behind the scenes stuff. But like you're talking about League of Champions, any winner of a store championship is invited to attend. You get a super sweet coin, you get a QR code and a special forge that you get to show off that you finished first place in a store event. And the event is taking place July 15th at 2 p.m. I don't know how many people are going to qualify or be involved in that, but I ended up procuring one of those coins as a victor, not as like a tournament organizer. And I beat up on somebody else that's in this chat right now. Just destroyed him 2 times in a row.
He might be looking like the Bad Batch right now. So
yeah,
you never know. But that's awesome. Congratulations on winning the store championship and getting an opportunity to play it in the League of Champions. I think that's to me that sounds like a ton of fun. That sounds more fun to me than even the World Championships, right? Like it's just this opportunity to get a whole bunch of people from all over the country, world, whatever it may be, together and really start, pound cards against each other in TTS. And I think that's, that's one of the things that a smaller game like this really has going for it, is that digital component. And I'm happy to see them embracing it. I hope they continue to embrace it.
Yeah.
Even more.
And Stoneblade has, at least the people that I've talked to in the situations I've been in, they really like the ability to be like building the communities on smaller levels, smaller pockets, Forge Guardian, or, the way that they've supported some of the smaller events that some of us try to run, but then also wanting to do events that are showcasing members and not like deifying people that are content creators or whatever, but just like inviting people into a larger story. But that's also like a celebration of, you've achieved this thing in our game, and we want you to get FaceTime with our team. We want you to get FaceTime with each other. So stuff like that, that's going to be coming up at some point too. That's really fun. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, I think there's a lot of really cool things that they've got on the horizon. I think a lot of the things that Justin has talked about on his podcast and, for this game and what his big vision picture is, I think if those things get realized, this game has the opportunity to do some really groundbreaking things. So this is just that first step in that process, right? So I think it's really cool to see it start to play out and see how it's going to come out. Even if I don't have a strong enough local community to set up a store championship, it's still cool to see that come together. So, and that's just going to be the way it works. What I do hope is that in the future they'll give an online store championship, essentially. That is another opportunity to play into League of Champions if you don't have a local that gives you access to as an opportunity to try to get into. Because there's certainly going to be folks that have a better opportunity to play in this if they play in a local market that has multiple stores that are going to run store championships, because then you get multiple opportunities to try to qualify, which is how Neil and I got basically our whole team into the Transformers Energon Invitational at PAX Unplugged. Was we found 5 stores within 3 hours that we could go and try, and I think we got it done in 3. So, at the end of the day, like, that's the kind of thing you want to see happen, is you want to see local stores pop up all over where you can choose to make a 2-hour drive from your home market, and try to participate and win. But if that doesn't happen, there needs to be another outlet too, another opportunity for somebody. And, maybe store champions can't enter into the online one or something. Some sort of way to gate it. But end of the day, I'm excited to watch this tournament. I really hope that they live stream it. And I hope that there's an opportunity for us to, as spectators, consume content on it. Not just post tournaments stuff, but stuff that's happening in the live and in the now with it. I would love to see them step up that sort of official support. Obviously that's what we do here on the Shuffle Bus, but I'd love to see Stoneblade do it as well. I think they have the opportunity to really make this thing explode with their reach if they do that.
Yeah, Jurch and I had, well, not yet, but at the end of this thing, we'll have 3 opportunities within 45 minutes of us. Now we, scheduling conflicts, I've only been able to make it to 1 so far, and Church 1 as well. So obviously that didn't, but technically, there were 3 stores within 45 minutes of us that held these things.
Right.
So my next opportunity, Church, what is it? About a week and a half away?
Yeah, June 25th, Dreamers Vault Minneapolis, 1 p.m.
He's teeing you up for the local conversation now. So we should just step into some of the local stuff.
Rolling right into it.
Yeah,
and also in other local news, Jurch's win is being reviewed for performance enhancing drugs. So that is, the local scene is taking a look at that to make sure that there is no foul play involved.
Jurch
as they should, Adderall, and I would like a copy of that review from them too.
Adderall is not allowed at tournaments like this, okay? You can't take it.
Exactly. He had a really sketchy Gatorade bottle. We're not sure what was in it. But
so I need to meet you at Gen Con before the tournament, Jurch, okay?
Yes, exactly right. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, Jurch knows a guy.
That's right.
You can't see me, but there's air quotes around knows a guy.
You got to know.
Fell off a truck.
Yep.
Yeah, it fell off a truck somewhere. Exactly.
Yep.
Right. Oh,
I have a funny story about falling off the truck, but we'll save that for some other point in time to talk about. So,
so I know that you've mentioned Ankh a whole bunch.
Yeah.
There is a store championship in that area that's coming up, because I know we're talking store championships. #Gaming Arena in Herndon, Virginia. And that is on June 25th at 2 p.m. So That's one that Ankh is trying to get up and running, and I haven't seen exactly what the sign up numbers are for it yet, but we've been plugging that for a couple of weeks, and hopefully that can get a pretty good turnout. And I'm sure that we'll get hopefully like a look in or a report on that as well.
Yep. Ankh adding that Kingwood Hobbies is running an online store champ. Ankh, can you link that event?
Oh, good.
We'll share that in the show, like in the description later on this event as well, or on this pod, so that folks who are interested in that, if the schedule works out, can participate. So if you've got a link to the Kingwood Hobbies store champ, online store champ, please drop it in chat and we'll get it passed around.
Yeah, and then we'll try to promote it too on our weekly podcasts and stuff like that if we get enough time to get the word out to people like you guys were saying that don't necessarily have a physical store that's close, but that still want the opportunity to try to get that. Yeah, we'd love to help out however we can.
Absolutely. All right. What other things we got? So we covered Herndon, Virginia. We've got Hammerhead Games in Sacramento. You want to talk about their event a little bit?
Yeah. So their store championship is on Sunday, June 18th. Okay. I believe that was 1 p.m. local time as well. I can't remember. And I did a bad job of previewing for this. So I forgot to get the link for that. Let's see. Oh, nope. I got it in another spot. So give me a second.
Okay.
In the meantime, I can fill this gap here.
Okay.
I'm hoping to take down that local one here in Minneapolis for that one. And if I get second place, I'm going to be really sad because the deck pairing that I'm going to be bringing is what I think is my strongest bronze pairing right now.
Nice.
And it is both halves are one win away for big silver, or one top two finish for big silver. So if I get second place, they're going to be silvered out and they're going to be eliminated from future attempts at store championships while not actually taking home the prize.
This is the gambler's dream right here.
This is the real reason he was talking to Shadow about changing the renown system.
We figured it out. We got there eventually.
Brought up with Shadow.
Exactly. Everything has a secret motive on my end.
Of course.
Just tuning Solforge for Fizzlesticks' personal use.
I would never expect less from you, Cody. That's awesome.
Okay, so I got the details.
Yeah,
the details.
All right.
Hammerhead Games Store Championship is June 18th at noon local time.
Okay.
Yeah,
nice.
It's out in Sacramento, California, like we said. So it starts at noon local time.
And if you've never been to Sacramento, you should go to Sacramento. It's a great town.
Yeah,
I love that city. So obviously a little too far away for me to make. It's it's just a quick hop and just skip and a jump, a 25-hour drive. So, but end of the day, I think that covers most of our.
That's all the non-self promotion news that we have.
Yep. So you guys have a little bit of news about the wrapping up of your first season of the pod. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So we don't want people to get worried, and I know at least one person would get worried if they didn't see a new episode for a couple of weeks span, but we are cutting off season 1 after 50 episodes because it's a nice round number. It works for my emotions. And then it lines up with other summer plans that we have because Cody and I are family. So when one of us has plans, we both have plans.
Yep.
So episode 50, which should drop on July 1st, unless I have another myriad of technical issues, which apologies to everybody why there's so much audio issues on the episode that then just got re-released today. That was a headache. So we're taking a few weeks off in July, and then we're going to see if we make some changes to try to make things as mediocre as possible.
That's awesome. You guys deserve the break. Like Neil and I, we take a break every year. We always take the holiday usually between Thanksgiving and Christmas, but and then go into the new year and start up after the new year. But we used to do our Shuffle Bus Invitational in December, and I think this year we're going to try to push it before Thanksgiving is what we're trying to lock in on a date before Thanksgiving. And that way we're able to kind of shut down after Thanksgiving and say it's smooth sailing. I think every content creator needs to take a little time away. It's just good for the soul. It allows you to come back invigorated and ready to talk about great things. So I'm excited for you guys to get a little break here and then come back with some awesome stuff.
Well, thank you. I actually plan on doing more work during that time.
You're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong, man. I've been doing this a long time. You're doing this wrong. Let me tell you. But yeah, look, we spent an hour talking about news and various other things, and we're never going to get through everything we wanted to get through today. We kind of knew that was going to be the case, but should we play some games for a little bit, and then we can talk cards, or do you want to talk cards and then play games?
Let's throw a couple games in, and we'll finish on cards.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Well, good thing that these games are about cards. So
yeah, they might lead to additional conversation.
I didn't sign up for this. I'm out.
Neil is always the bah humbug. What can I tell you?
Something like your talent.
Yeah. Oh, Neil's going to dislike these. There's not clear winners on these games either. So that makes it even worse.
I am now proud to say that Heads Down Thumbs Up is officially sweeping the nation because now it's been on 2 content creator channels.
I'd say it's a real thing at this point.
And across multimedia platforms.
Wow. I thought it was just Mrs. Burdick's 4th grade classroom when she was a little tired of teaching the rest of us, but I guess it's more. I'm going to have to go tell her something. For those who don't know,
I want to know, do you actually have communication with her still? That's what I want to know. That's the big question.
It's been a few years.
Okay.
But she may no longer be with us.
Oh.
But we attended the same church. So when I would see her and I'd say hi and she'd still remember me. And
nice.
For better, for worse. But I should probably check in with Mrs. Burdick to see if she's doing okay.
Yeah. I go to church with my old shop teacher. So that's why I asked if you still had some sort of connection with her. So,
it's been a few years.
That's awesome.
So Heads Down, Thumbs Up.
Okay.
It is played differently than in the classroom. This game, I'm going to list off a card. I'm going to talk about the details of it. And then each of you are going to take some time to think relative to, like your previous expectations of this card when you first were introduced to this card. This is kind of just a snapshot of, are you thinking highly of this card relative to previously? So you'd give it a thumbs up. Or if this card is kind of falling on your personal affinity for it or power rankings or however you value a card, it's very subjective. Then you'd give that a heads down.
Okay. And chat, you guys can join in on this too.
Absolutely.
Give your heads up, thumbs up, heads down.
Hey, it took one of us on our show months before he could say it right. So you messing it up the first time is no problem.
Yeah. Give your thoughts in chat on this too. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it. We can incorporate that into some of the feedback. So that's why we're doing this live. It's a chance for other people
I think
to hear this too.
Our first 40 outtakes on this was just me calling everything thumbs down instead of heads down. It's just so much editing for Jurch. I just wanted a thumbs up or thumbs down everything. I didn't want to
down, thumbs up, down. Lights off. Yeah, it was.
You're just the bad guy from Gladiator, giving him the
Right. Yeah. And again, to emphasize, this isn't necessarily if you think the card is good or bad. This is just recently. Has it gone up or down your power rankings?
Sure.
Is the stock rising or is the stock falling in your opinion? Because some of these cards we've talked about them and, they started really high on our list, but now we think they're more kind of falling back to the average. And so they've been a heads down, even though we still think they're a good card.
Sure. Yep. Totally get the concept of the game. Listen to you guys play this a bunch. I'm excited to play it with you.
Awesome. So this first one is from set 2, Battle for White Fang Pass. It is the Tempest Exalt spell Thunder Crash Field. So at level 1, you play it into a lane, in the Exalt portion of a lane, and it says you may play a spell sprite in this lane. Whenever the creature in this lane gains attack, deal 2 damage to enemy player. Level 2 is the exact same text, same result, but then level 3 of this card says you may play a spell Swarm minion in each Thunder Crash Field lane. And then it still has that same text of when a creature in this lane gains attack, deal 2 damage to the enemy player. All right, Neil, we'll start with you first because you're kitty corner for me in at least my picture. Heads down, thumbs up on Thunder Crash Field.
Heads down for sure. Not because it's bad, because I thought it was great going in, and it just is. It's just a very unfun card. So when the set was the very first preview of it, I thought it was bad, but then just playing against it exactly once, just realized that it's crazy and very good. And I don't think that that's changed in any recent amount of time.
Do you think it's slept on, Neil? I don't see it that often.
Do I think it's slept on? No. Yeah. I think people love this card. I guess I haven't seen it in lists that I've seen winning a lot of stuff lately, but just because it's not like winning an ultimate championship doesn't mean people don't love it. Like,
right.
This is a card that Shadow talked to me about, like, kind of in right after the set came out, and when I was preparing to go to Indy and just playing a bunch with him, and we were talking about it. He's like, this is like, he was talking to the development team about it. He's like, this card is just stupid and dumb. Don't print it. He was very concerned about the combination of Thunder Crash Field and I think,
was it the Reaper?
No, Burnout. I don't know, the one that makes a spell sprite and then pumps your team.
Yep, Burnout.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's very good, and the level 3 is even bigger.
Yeah.
But wait, but then you still give it a heads down, right?
I give it a heads down because I thought, like, my opinion of it hasn't changed, like, since the week after set 2 came out.
Okay.
Like, I thought it was great, and it stayed great. I don't think its stock has changed much.
We don't have a neutral. We
Maybe
don't
I
have
don't
Switzerland here,
understand
man.
It's the king of not being decisive. I think I'm the king. Yeah, I made this game very, it's either up or down, and then it can be varying levels of it, but yeah. So I see exactly what you're saying with it, Neil. Jesse, jump in.
Yeah, I think for me, I think I was really high on it at first, and I think I do agree with Neil that I think it's a very good card, but I think it requires enough synergies to exist in your deck to really take advantage of it. And so that means you have to put work into it to really make it good. And it may not be a lot of work. I want to be really clear about that. So, like, all you need is really the spell sprite that comes into play in another spell, right? But that still is a second card, and there are just going to be times when this thing doesn't necessarily do anything. And then there's going to be other times when it's extremely good. And my tightest game in our seal event that I won, where I won the game -1 to 1. That's how close it was a determination on whether or not when Thundersoar is killed, whether it gets attack boost that would trigger Thunder Crash Field. Which it doesn't, because Thundersoar does get a boost, but it's done out of play and not in the lane. So that's why Thunder Crash doesn't trigger. So I think that's why my overall on this is a heads down, is that there's just a little bit too much work for me to be really excited to see Thunder Crash Field and say I want to pursue this card as a build around me. I want it in my deck, and as long as my deck can take advantage of it, cool. But I don't want to specifically build around it. So I think that makes it a heads down for me.
Interesting. 2 downs. Fizz, take us home.
Well, Jurch,
Yep.
as you're aware, this card was used to nickel and dime my health points down to below 0 about a week ago at that store championship. So that was unfortunate. With that being said, I'm still going to heads down this one. And I had this one pretty high on my list when I first saw it. I was thinking of a ton of different combinations where it'd be very, very good. Thundersoar is one of my favorite cards. So something that kind of synergizes with something that thing already wants to do, right? Oh, you dealt damage to my Thundersoar, take 2 damage. I buffed my Thundersoar, take 2 damage. Like, it seems like it's pretty good, right? Just for playing the game with some of these cards, and Tempest loves boosting the attack of its creatures. You're just dealing 2 damage. But as was pointed out in one of our previous tournaments here locally, it is a relatively slow card. For the level 2 to only put out a spell sprite minion, that's extremely understated for a cycle 2 play. You're taking up a whole play. They usually only get 2 per turn, unless you're Ryan or Greg. And so for that to be your only play, and to get a spell sprite minion, and then maybe get a second, spell play where you get to deal 2 damage and boost your spell sprite up to a 3/4, it's a little weak. I always compare it to Runescarred Pit, because Jurch tried to use that logic to say Runescarred Pit is also slow. But that's the exact opposite, where I'm getting a 6/6 creature out in the first deck cycle, which is very strong. And then I get to get 2 of them out in the second deck cycle. For Thundercrash Field, I still only get 1 minion out. I don't get that multiplicity factor of the minions until the third deck cycle, which for a burn down deck is late. That's already too late. I'm trying to burn people down in the second deck cycle. So anyways, I love the concept of this card, how it plays out in my head, but how slow it is playing on the board, I just think it's a little too slow. So it's heads down from where I originally had it at, which is very high on my rankings.
That one's not a surprise. You do sound quite salty still. So you're definitely not biased in your opinion on that one. Yeah, I've been pretty volatile on this one. That initially when we started seeing set 2 and this whole new thing of exalts was coming into play, I predicted early on that people would really lean into it and they would really try to see that this was a super powerful mechanism. And then I know at Fuse Fest, people tried to fill their board with exalts instead of, actually still trying to play the game. And that led to a lot of ruin for those types of players. And then this is one of them that this one is comparing it to Runescarred Pit, which I know I'm eating my words for that, but I accept that. This one is slow. And at the second cycle, it is really difficult to convince yourself to play that because you only get 1 way under curve minion at that time in order to try to set up for a pretty good third cycle possible play. But it doesn't have to be those spell sprites that are gaining attack in those lanes. There's so many other creatures. Neil, like you said, you could do burnout. And then, you could have creatures that are worthwhile in those lanes that can keep getting buffed up for attack. Or I've done cards like Zithian Dreadmaw, where it's also got stealth, and then you could be getting attack. So it is a lot of that kind of ping burn down damage. I also try not to get too sucked into using this card. So initially when I started out and looked at exalts, my thinking was high, but I also expected the market to overinflate their value. And then my idea of almost every exalt plummeted personally, rightly or wrongly. But this one now in a really recent snapshot is kind of a thumbs up, because as long as you're not making it a mechanism that you're playing with, if you're able to cheat this out for free or able to do kind of something else with it. So I'm thinking like a Blight Witch when we're talking about pairings. So I'm being very liberal with how I'm evaluating this particular card. So I'm already breaking my own rules. I do think that it has value as a domino you're setting up for a much larger scheme, but don't rely on it. So a tepid thumbs up for me on this one.
That's almost neutral, Jurch. I'm just going to say.
Carl adds
it's pretty close.
But it's not.
Carl adds, why does Runescarred put trigger in Betrayer Runescarred Pits, but Thundercrash Field doesn't? It does, right? Like the level 3 does anyway, or am I missing something?
No, the note that was on the with the excellent production value that Jesse's bringing to the table here, Jurch, take notes. He had the actual card database pulled up for Thundercrash Field, and actually has a special note on it saying it does not trigger for each faction. Versus if you pull up Runescarred Pit, I did type this up quick to make sure. It says it does trigger for the faction, so it's a completely different ruling based on whether it does.
That's really really just gonna like completely change my opinion of this card, because I hate templating discrepancies.
Yep.
Yeah,
But which one's the templating discrepancy? Is that
I'm trying to read Runescarred right now. Hang on.
I would say Runescarred Pit is the correct one, because if you think about Alpha Wolves, that also pulls in other faction Alpha, or no, I'm sorry, the Echo Wolves that brings in the other Echo Wolves.
Yep.
So
I think it's a little strange.
It isn't. It actually isn't a templating discrepancy, because
they wrote it differently.
Well, so both of them have deploy. You may play a zombie brute in this lane. Deploy. You may play a spell sprite in this lane. Then they have a second line of text. So on Thundercrash Field, it says like the Thundercrash stuff, but on Runescarred, there's a second line of text that says when you play any 2 or 3 Runescarred Pit, you may put a zombie brute in this lane. So the new one doesn't put the zombie in play on the old ones. The old ones trigger when the new ones come in.
Oh,
That's different than how this, because the level 3 is worded. You may play a spell swarm in each Thundercrash field on the deploy line, and that is not how RuneScarred works. So because the RuneScards have text conditional for when other RuneScard come into play, it's different, and that's why it's.
How many betrayers are there? Curious.
I don't know. I know Philly has one.
One Utera.
Philly has a red one, which is I think
one
the best
Aloyan.
one.
Thundercrest Field is red to begin with. One Aloyan.
Sorry, I was talking about RuneScard.
Gotcha. So there's only 2 Betrayer Thundercrest Fields in existence. Period.
Yeah, but
it's such an interesting decision. I mean, I understand the argument, so I don't want to get into the logistics of the argument, but it's interesting that it had to have this like, ruling for 2 cards that exist in the wild.
It feels like it would be low impact
yeah,
to allow it to hit the other, because even if it was common to have a betrayer one, like if there were 100,000 betrayer ones out in the field right now, it still wouldn't trigger that much. Because how often in your game, like, are you going to end up with a 4 Thunder Crash or 5 Thunder Crash cycle 3? And that's going to be the best thing you can be doing.
Right.
Yeah.
But obviously I didn't write the card, so.
Plus Flame Jet, it's it's basically your next spell play, assuming none of them get destroyed, is 10 damage, 10 additional damage, which is significant. But I don't want to pull in other cards as examples, but Shambling Shambler is far more of an egregious use case than getting 5 spell swarms out there and your next spell dealing 10 damage.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that too. I think obviously there are more powerful things to be doing. I think that's another thing that hurts it. And one of the comments in chat was from Ankh that it's a cool card, but it's hurting because of the life gain meta. It's like any direct damage spell right now is in a position where life gain is kind of the antithesis of direct damage burn style decks, right? They've generally been the counter to those kinds of decks. And so you have to have life gain, because if you don't, then these decks just run rampant, right? But if you overdo the life gain, which we know has been an admitted mistake from Stoneblade, that set 1 life gain was a little too heavy-handed. I think all direct damage spells are going to kind of be exciting to look at first, because they're the easiest to see a win condition in immediately, and then unless the meta plays into their favor in some way, I think they're going to naturally be heads down as you move forward. Just like inevitably, they're going to ratchet down as the meta evolves. Unless we see some crazy thing emerge that's really pushing that damage, that direct damage synergy.
Well, there's no cards that are specifically like life gain hate right now.
Not yet.
Not yet. But in that scenario, I think that pulls some things back into line of where something negative happens to you if you gain life. That would be a good counter. It just needs to be done in the right scenario. Yeah. The only thing we have is, what is it? The Razor Tooth? Razor
Tooth has get some attack if your opponent gain life or whatever. So yeah, I obviously will be very curious to see how the design team sort of reels back in the set 1 mistake, but once they do that, I think it's very possible that cards like Thundercrash Field and the direct damage spells that exist will really ramp up in power once the life gain comes back in Thundercrash Field. We all sat here and said Thundercrash Field's a good card. So at the end of the day, we all agree the card's good. It just doesn't necessarily play into a meta strategy right now at a competitive level that is maybe the best strategy to be playing into, just based on current meta analysis. So we'll see. If Blight Witch and Stitchers and Necromancers and all these things start to disappear because they're not impactful anymore because of the lack of life gain and stuff like that, now you might have a real winner here. You might have something that's really, really strong.
Yeah. To answer Ankh, 0 love for Razor Tooth. Despise that card. The payoff is so weak.
That card's
for
bad.
Yes, for what you're getting. Just no. I want something so much better. I want you get to play a card for free if your opponent gained life this turn, or
give
something
creatures
like
breakthrough.
That. Yeah,
Well,
give something breakthrough. And
that'll
attack.
teach them.
I want Razor Tooth to be, if it's anything, instead of being opponent gave life this turn, it's like the antithesis of Swamp Moss Lurker. If the opponent's over a certain life pool, get this big attack boost, right? Like, yeah, something that's saying, hey, you're playing a strategy that this thing is going to hate you for, right? Like, and that's what I want a card design like Razor Tooth to be, is more in that concept of like, yes, you're
the problem with hate cards in general this game is that because you can't choose to sideboard them, all it does is it says like say they print a card that's really good against life gain and makes burn applicable. It doesn't actually make life gain worse. It just says all the burn decks from now on have to have this card or they're not good.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, that's like the Tinker. It's a card I just want in every single Loyan deck, because why not? Like, every faction puts out minions, so if I can just wipe every minion you have off the board in cycle 3, it's going to be good. And then if they're playing an Oak Father strategy or a Brute strategy, like, all right, I just canceled out everything you did. Now, if I could sideboard a Tinker, every single sideboard has Tinker in it, because in the event that you come across one of those minion heavy decks, you're just going to instantly pop that in your deck. But like you said, sideboarding is just not possible with something where it's an algorithmically generated half deck.
Core adding in Leyline Vermin as a an anti-life gain type thing.
Oh yeah. Every deck.
Absolutely,
yep.
That's just like like, here's a busted insane card. Do you want it in your pile?
Yeah. So, all right, let's move on. Card number 2. We might as well, right? Like, we got
sure. And I've got plenty of these, depending on how many you want to do before.
Let's do 3, and then we'll move on, and we can talk some meta, and then we can come back to one more game before we wrap up.
Okay, if we've only got 3, then let's see.
You got something really spicy in your list over there, Jurch?
Yeah, let's not do that one. Okay, so the next one we're gonna do is Palladium Simulacrum, which took me a very long time in order to pronounce correctly. But I got it straight from the horse's mouth. So Palladium Simulacrum. So this is an Alolan creature, and it has mobility, and it says when a creature changes lanes, give this card +2 attack, +3 attack, or +5 attack.
It's not just this card, it's when any creature moves lanes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, when any creature changes lanes.
Yeah.
Is it changes or moves lanes?
Moves lanes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give this card + attack. So, let's see. Jesse, we'll start with you. I'll be a nice change up on that one. So, Jesse, what do you think about Palladium Simulacrum? Heads down, thumbs up.
This is a thumbs up for me. I don't even have to think about it. There's a couple of things that I like about this card. One, it takes no work to trigger its abilities. So you're guaranteed to create a 4/6. I come from the Sir Mix-a-Lot school of thought on creatures in this game, and I like big butts, and so 6 at 1 is a big butt creature. I mean, it's ready for most combat. I mean, there are obviously creatures that can outshine it in that defense side, but this also has relevant text on it. A lot of times those creatures don't, and so I think it scales really well all the way through its upgrade curve. So there's never a time where I think you're not wanting to take advantage of this. If you have any extra mobility in your deck, it's even better, but it doesn't require it, right? Like it just is a good creature across the board. And I think that it's just you're never going to be sad to play a Palladium Simulacrum into the board. I think it's just in general that 4/6 starting point. I mean, there are certainly probably plays. Obviously, I should say never. Never is an absolute. and 90% of the time, you're going to be very happy with Palladium Simulacrum. And so I think for me, it's a thumbs up because it's the kind of thing I want to have my cards do, is not require other things to make them good. Just go out and play good cards. And I think this is one of those.
Have you been running it lately? And in any of your decks?
I only have a couple of decks with it. It's not a deck it's not a card that I have a lot of decks that have it that are also good halves. I'm excited because the deck I bought from Joel that won the recent Shuffle Bus has a Palladium Simulacrum. So yes, I will be playing it much more here in the coming weeks. So, but I have played it a fair amount in some other decks that I had that had it as well. And been with it.
Yeah. Neil, what do you think? Heads down, thumbs up, Palladium Simulacrum.
I'm not a very gymnastic person, but I would headstand right now if I could. This card is heads down so far, like ostrich buried in the dirt, heads down. I have grown to hate this card.
Oh,
and
no.
Like when, so to preface this, originally I had it really high. Like when we first started playing, we first started covering stuff, it seemed like it was really good because, to Jesse's point, it does kind of like grow itself, and through some investment it gets better. But it's just like, one, blue is awkward at best in the piles that it can roll, and the good cards in blue are not movement cards. So they're like, the good Palladium Simulacrum deck is like a bad blue deck, and a bad blue deck is like a bad every other color deck. So I just like, maybe there's some red deck that has a bunch of good movement red cards and a Betrayer Simulacrum in it that's great somewhere, where the Simulacrum is great in it. But I just like, the decks that this card is good in, I never seem to think are any good anymore. The movement archetype as a whole is really underwhelming. That being said, like, if you have a deck like Joel's deck that Jesse was calling out, where the rest of the deck is super good, this is a card that I'm not unhappy having just as a card. But if, for the purpose of this game, where we're talking about like how I feel about the card and how exciting the card is, or how even good the card is, it's way, way down from when I originally had it.
Yeah, that's totally legit.
I want to respond so much with Neil on this. Neil and I'm ready to have a diatribe with Neil on this, but we'll let Cody go, and we'll save it for a future episode.
Well, I'm not as heads down as Neil is, I don't think, but I am heads down on this. But I have different reasonings. My issue with this is that in a faction that has some ways to sneak around blockers, buffing up this card just to get it chump blocked every single turn is really frustrating. And since its mobility is not very high, one mobility, it only sneaks from one lane to the next. So you just have to block side by side lanes and make sure, like a level 2 Lycian Rain will just shut this thing down most of the time as far as blocking goes. So if it had stealth, this would probably be a thumbs up for me, because you actually have a so what for pumping it up. But every time I have played this card and tried to make it good, it seems like I just get this ridiculously statted creature and push 0 damage with it, which is very frustrating. It's very different from Thundersoar, where you get a huge payoff for buffing up that creature. It has breakthrough. It's going to push damage. And then every time something hits it, it gets bigger, right? And there's even a bigger threat for next time. It's like a must Dreadbolt kind of a card. Versus
Thundersoar also doesn't die in 2 combats like this always does.
Exactly correct. Yes, it sticks around for a while. It has other utility. And, Jesse, I do like big butts as well, but I don't think this is a big enough butt for how much work you need to put into making it large to push significant damage. I compare it to like even an Aegis Knight, which has a really cool hook to grabbing additional attack, but it comes with stealth, and I can immediately get it large enough to push damage if I just have one armor creature, or if my opponent has one armor creature on the board. So yeah, this is a heads down for me. I just don't think it's that strong of a card, unfortunately. And I have to put a lot of work into it for not getting a good amount of payoff. And in this game, I can't bank on 2 turns worth of pumping up a creature in order to get my payoff. I need my payoff that turn, maybe even that play, with how much removal some of these other decks have.
I don't know how to spell Aegis. I was going to show it for this.
It looks like
I don't know how to spell the word Aegis.
Looks like Billy and Core and Onk are also kind of all on the same page. Core says, for me, sadly, heads down. I had high hopes for mobility when I first got into I assumed the game. And so while the card is good, I probably had it high on my list for the strategy. Onk says heads down for me.
AE.
It doesn't grow fast enough, and having to switch lanes can be a downside. And Billy says, I've tried it with Warcaller and a deck that has other good stuff like Epoch Hawk and Palladium Hive Mind, but it's not been good. Yeah, I just think that all three of those guys kind of fall on the same page as me and Cody, where it looks like it should be great, but just all the parts don't get there.
Mm-hmm. No, I hear you. So I get when cards like this are easy to be chump blocked, but I have found so much value if you're able to, when you're off Forge, play this as your second card, and then you can either move it into the way of something, so then it's buffed up and it's more than a chump blocker, or move it out of the way of something, so then you're already buffing it up when your opponent then is on the back foot for the changeover when you have the Forge, and then you might have gotten 2 opportunities to buff up the attack. If your opponent is ignoring this and you end up getting 2 of these out on the board, it's such a cascading effect that it's tough to come back from. And I know that I've got a couple of decks that are really mobility synergy and they're super fast. So I like to bring them to events when I want to just kind of do something fun, and it wins fast or it loses fast. I really like it. And as long as you're not building around your whole deck behind this card coming to fruition and getting up to like 20 attack, it's a fun card. And it's also one, especially in sealed, like mobility. If you're able to leverage that correctly in sealed, it's really hard to counteract because everybody is scrambling to learn their decks. And if you know, I can just be bouncing this card back and forth, or I can have it travel over where you can't catch up to it. Yeah, 1 mobility is not a whole lot, but I had a lot of success in Denver for the sealed event that I played in, where I was able to use this and really just punish opponents who weren't able to kind of keep up. So it's a thumbs up for me, because I'm continually finding new ways to make this a positive asset to whatever deck it ends up being in.
Do you think, I think one of the fallacies is that you have to have a heavy mobility deck to make this work.
Sure.
Right. I think it's, you go, oh yeah, I want to leverage as many creature moves as possible to buff this thing up. But I don't think it's a card, to Neil's point, where you want to invest in it so heavily that it's your flagship card in your deck. But to the point that he's making about the Joel deck, it's a great 4th or 5th card in your list. And if nothing else moves, it's still just a good card. I think that's the issue I have with it. Does it grow out of control? No, of course not. Can it if you had like this heavy move synergy thing? Sure. But I think mobility is limited by the 5 lanes so much that you can't be heavily invested in all mobility. Like I think to Neil's point, like the mobility strategy itself isn't all that flexible or great as a primary build around me type of strategy in Solforge. But I do think that having some mobility is situationally very good and makes the card, in some cases, 10, 15% better than any other 4/6 creature you play. And that's why I see this as.
I would argue that if you're saying the mobility is an asset to it, it's not necessarily a 4/6 creature. That my biggest issue with mobility as a keyword is that it's not sneaky. It's not like everybody says, well, you can just get around blockers. Well, that's not exactly how it works, because it's face up on the table, and assuming that you and your opponent are both not making mistakes, like essentially it's as hindering to you as it is to your opponent, because either you're playing it in lane 2, 3, or 4, so you've already restricted yourself to where you can play it. You're also restricting where you can play other cards to allow it to move to 2 places. If it's stuck where it can only move 1 place, your opponent has full control over whether they want to fight a 4/6 or they want to go to the lane next to it and just let you, to them, then leave it as a 2.
No, I understand I know what you're arguing. I understand the argument, and I don't disagree with your argument as a whole. I just think that mobility is a flexible enough ability on a card that, yes, you're playing with known information, but there are times when your opponent just can't actually respond to that known information.
I believe that having mobility is better than not having mobility. Sure. It's better than being blank. But I I think too many people put too much stock in it can just get around blockers, because that's not actually how mobility ever plays.
Yeah, no, and that was my argument too. I didn't think it's free damage. I don't see it as a burn spell. Like, it's not a creature burn spell, right? Like, it could be, but it's not always that. And so what I just see it as is a reasonably statted creature. You can always get the 4/6. You can always get the 4/6. There is no situation where you can't. Now, whether there are situations where you may not want to, but that's different than can't, right? And so I think that makes the card better across a broader spectrum of the game. And not just simply looking at it in a vacuum, but just saying in a broad spectrum of the game, having access to this ability always can force and change the way your opponent plays. And I think that whether that means they put a creature into a lane adjacent that you don't want to mobility into because it would not be a favorable combat trade. But if that situation works out in a particular way, and yes, you still only have a 2/6, if it lives, it's a 4/6 later, right? It's never not a 4/6. It can be a 4/6 at any time that you want it to become that. And I think that's powerful. Is it better than a static 4/6 in a lane if you're just talking immediate play value? I don't know. Maybe not. But you have to weigh out that mobility has gameplay and can dictate or change the way your opponent plays the game. And I think that is a powerful ability in and of itself, even if you never actually use it. And yes, a 2/6 on paper, pretty bad, right? Like, that's Blight Witch stats, right? Like, Blight Witch does amazing things, and we don't care about the Blight Witch stats, right? Like, at all, but because of what Blight Witch does. This is a card we still care about its stats, because this is a card that's focused on combat. And I think in that analysis, it's a good combat creature. I don't think it's a bad combat creature at all. It's just, there are better cards in it, no doubt.
I do have some fun factoids on this card. The set 2 card, the Researcher, is actually the old level 1 art for this card, and this was the level 2 art from the original Solforge. So they are reusing multiple levels of art for different cards. And so if you put them side by side, you can kind of see the evolution of the card from the Researcher to the Palladium Simulacrum.
That's Steel Eye Researcher?
No, just Researcher.
Just Researcher.
They did the thing that Neil loves, where they took part of a word and made it a
oh yeah, I see that now. That is a fun factoid for our audience to see here. It is
another fun one is the Ice Crusher and the Shard back. But the Ice Crusher was level 2, I believe, and the Shard back was level 3.
Have we seen the level 1 for that one yet?
No.
Okay.
No. And for the audience, since the original game was a digital game, every single card had different art at every level. So it was all like the Everflame Phoenix.
I've noticed that similarity, and I just have never put it together. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, the Shardback and the Ice Crusher are very similar. It's cool. That's cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. All right, so I guess it depends on what we want to do here. You guys, do you want to talk state of the meta? Because we've got 30 minutes left in the show.
I think that would be a great idea.
Okay, so let's talk state of the meta. Let's unpack this competitive meta and talk about what we think, in my mind, what we think World Championships might look like. Because I think that's the next. I mean, League of Champions is the next big one, but those are still potentially bronze decks, right? Going into League of Champions. So I think that there's a little bit wider swath of decks that could be played in League of Champions. Whereas World Championship is being a gold event is going to really narrow down the meta and distill it down, which is what ultimately a meta discussion is about the distilling down of the pool into a handful of powerful synergies or strategies that are the best things you could be doing in a given game scenario. And so I don't care who wants to start. Jurch, you've been kind of leading the show with the games, but I'll have you start. What do you think the most common meta thing will be at World Champions?
So at TCGCon Denver, when the 10 players lined up and they had their decks out, and then I was able to walk around, and I noticed that all 10 of them had Necrium, and 8 out of the 10 had Utera, and the other two had Aloyan.
Mhm.
That was eye-opening to me. And I know it's a small sample size as somebody that comes from a background in statistics and math, and I know that's a small sample size, but also there were people who traveled to this event. So it wasn't just local people, that there were some people that were traveling to this event, and that was still what was showing up. I would like to reach out and see if we could get the data, or, just, go check it for UK Games Expo, and then what Origins is going to be. And if it's that similar of a cross section in terms of a bunch of different events now are mostly leaning towards the Utera Necrium, where it's life gain, and life gain itself is not a win condition or a play strategy. There has to be a so what with it.
Right.
But I think that's an unavoidable, just this is where things are going. And I know it's been bandied about and talked about that even if it's not your, like, even if you don't have the best Necrium Utera, you're still going to bring the best one you've got, because the fifth best life gain deck is what people are thinking is their best shot. So I've read a lot of like Malcolm Gladwell and stuff like that, and market inefficiencies and zagging when everybody else is zigging. So I hope that other people are trying to take that approach for larger events and trying to come at people sideways. But it is looking at the data available to us and kind of theory crafting things, as it seems like it is a lot of derivations of life gain with Necrium and Utera.
Yeah. So Neil, do you have anything to add to that, or anything different to add to that, you think, in terms of?
To be a little more specific, I mean, there's like a 100% chance that Greg plays Oros combo, right?
Sure, yeah.
Like his one green half that's Oros with the Dark Forge Drain and the double Forgeborn redos, plus probably a purple half. There's, I assume, a 100% chance that his brother will play the same green purple that he's been playing forever. Add on to the thing, I'm still gonna say that it is not the life gain that draws people to these colors, it's the free cards.
Mm-hmm.
Like the decks that are going to be in the World Championships and the decks that are going to win the World Championships are going to be the ones that play the most free cards, which happens to be those colors.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because you would think that Tempe's would be up there because it also plays a bunch of free cards, but the life gain actually is more important to the strategy than I had previously thought. And it's just about extending the game, because when you're applying pressure to your opponent through card advantage like that, where if I'm playing, a Swamp Moss Lurker or whatever the spell is that makes a free 3/3 when you gain life, like whatever nonsense extra cards I'm playing, the longer I get to do that, the further ahead I'm going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So extending the game is in favor of those decks, as well as purple is busted, right? Like as much crap as I give Joel about spouting that, like I don't agree with that you shouldn't play it because it's busted, but it really is the best color. Like
it does a lot of very, very good things, no doubt.
It has too many free cards. Like it just, even the cards that aren't like literally free cards are still card advantage type effects. Like I can't think of what it's called. And if you played a spell, you can activate it to make a 3/3. Or like
the summoner.
Yeah. Like that's not literally a free card, but it's like almost a free card. Like Necromancer isn't literally a free card until level 3, but it's almost a free card. It just plays too many extra cards as a color as a whole.
Yep.
I'm surprised that we didn't see anybody trying to play Rumble Spark. Rumble Spark has gone way, way down, I think, in my opinion, as well as in general. I think a lot of people have been down on it as also, but it's still very powerful. And there's probably somebody out there that has a good half, like good enough half. And so I think it's like Necrium free stuff and possibly a Rumble Spark. And then just what's popular, right? Like lots of people love Shamblers, which kind of falls into that first category. I know, Jesse, you have an Oros combo half, but those are like the things we've been seeing winning, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's not super riveting. I want to get to Cody quick and see if he has any additional comments to add on what he thinks World Championships will look like. I do wonder if there's a hidden anti-meta gem somewhere in this tournament. So I want to get Cody's thoughts on it, and then we can circle back, because Cora's provided a lot of statistics on the UK, and we can bring those up here as well. He brought them up in live chat, so we'll get to him here in just a second. But I want Cody to have a chance to add to this conversation as well.
Yeah, well, I have 2 comments on the Tempest part, arguably 3, but Tempest does play a lot of free cards, but they don't put any bodies on the board. I think that's a huge part of the Utera and the Necrium free cards, it being able to put out cards that gain life. It's bodies. You're getting bodies out on the board, which is super advantageous, right? It's the free minion plays and the free cards in general that get the bodies out of the board. Then obviously Greg exploits that later on by then just buffing creatures up to ridiculous levels because of all the free spells that he's been able to play, right? And then Ryan's half is a little different, where his creatures get large because of the life gain, which then puts more free cards down and more free bodies. So I think that's a huge part, that Tempest is just at a disadvantage from the free card play, because it's like, hey, you get to play Flamejet for free if you take some damage. Okay, well, my opponent played a Glowhive Siren and negated almost all the free damage I did to them, and the free damage that I did to myself stuck. So I think that's a big difference there, and potentially one of the reasons why we didn't see Tempest at Denver. I personally switched from Tempest on my half to Utera in response to a lot of the stuff that I saw at Indy and what I saw was happening on some of the online events. I was playing a Shambler deck with a Tempest half that did a lot of burn down and did a lot of board wipes. The problem is that I absolutely could not keep pace with the life gain. It basically ended up where I would do my burn down, they would do their life gain, they would end up at roughly the same spot, and my board state was worse for the wear. And then they still had creatures on the board and dealing damage to me. So I switched to an Atera half that kind of switched gears and played off of a different aspect of the Shambler deck that I had, and played that because I knew that if I made the top cut and I was in some of the semifinals or the finals, I was going to see Ryan or Greg at one point, and I needed to be able to match their decks at one point. I did end up seeing Ryan in pool play and was able to squeak out a win, but then got blasted by Greg just one round later for his deck. So 50-50 against those brothers there. So definitely some tweaking still to that deck to be done to make it more consistent. But yeah, I rolled off of Tempest into Atera. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think Rumble Spark is an avenue. I think Rumble Spark has higher variance than some of these other decks. I think its ceiling is higher, but I think its floor is lower. So
I'm not
if
even sure
somebody's
its
willing to
ceiling is
roll the
higher.
dice on that. See, I think it is. I think Rumble Spark a good Rumble Spark deck, I think, can eliminate you in 3 or 4 turns if it rolls well. But it has to roll well. Like I'm talking Darkheart Sorcerer into Nova Elementalist turn 1 with no removal for the Darkheart on the other side. Like these are the kind of the high rolls you have to have. You instantly have, what is it, Jurch? A 4/6 on Nova Elementalist, a 4/8 instantly on Rumble Spark, plus a 2/8 in Darkheart that's draining you. That's a lot of stats on the board off of 2 plays, plus things that are going to continually profit off of every single spell that you play. So it can be very, very high output, but you got to roll it right. And then the floor can just be lower because in some of these life gain decks, it feels like every other card is gaining life and doing things you want it to do, versus in that Rumble Spark deck, you need one of those engine building cards in Darkheart or Nova Elementalist to come up in the first deck cycle, or you're going to be treading water at best.
Yeah. It feels very much like an all-in strategy. And I think as an all-in strategy, could it win a big tournament? Yeah, absolutely could, because it is powerful, no doubt. And if it just you live on the plus side of the law of averages there, then you might come out on the victor at the end of a tournament. But I think over a broad spectrum of games, I think that deck is going to turn out to be a 50-50 deck, more often than not, which means that most players that play it will win half their games and lose half their games, and I think that's just what you can expect out of it. Maybe it's a little higher than that. I don't know the real numbers. I haven't crunched 1,000 games with it or something to see where it comes out. But I was more interested coming off of our last tournament where suppressing and stabilizing and sonic burst just looked like MVP all-stars into this meta. I mean, I think, it's hard to discount Joel going completely undefeated with that in his arsenal. It's really hard to say, was this a fluke or is this a real thing with these decks that are out there right now? The life gain decks, the purple green Necreum decks, all the Blight Witches and Dark Art Sorcerers and all these things that we think, Shamblers, this sort of thing that's coming into play. Like, these are all great cards and they're all very viable and strong strategies. But I do wonder if this suppressing, stabilizing, sonic burst type approach on your blue half paired with probably a purple half, to be honest, I don't think he played the best pairing with his deck. But I think those things are very, very telling. Like, I think if you have the synergy on the purple half or the red half, I guess you can make it red blue if you have enough mages. I think you can really get there at the end of the day with a deck that does that, because it just answers such a wide swath of things in the game. And it essentially turns 33% of one half of your blue half into a removal suite, right? And in some of those cases, that removal suite is 2 for 1, 3 for 1, 4 for 1, 5 for 1 option. Like, the ceiling is 5 for 1 on Sonic Burst. The floor is 1 for 1. It's very interesting to me. And I do think that, I think that those kind of decks could emerge at World Championships and be the more dominant strategy, potentially. I think they have an opportunity for it. And I think we just haven't seen it play out. It's still too new and too fresh. And so the real question that's going to happen here is, now that the Gregs and the Ryans of the world and the other top players of the world that are going to show up at World Champions and try to win that thing know that kind of deck exists, will they shift? Will they shift?
I don't think so.
I mean, yeah, I don't either. At this point, it's not tested and proven enough. But what happens with League of Champions if an Alliance suppressing stabilizing goes out and wins League of Champions before Gen Con?
I still don't care. I still would rather play either of the Creech Brothers decks. The deck is good. Like, obviously went undefeated in our tournament, and having the tools, like, stabilize, like, he had a great spread in that half, right? Where he had a suppressing plus the burst to handle, like, the small utility guy type decks, the Blight Witches and the Dark Hearts.
It's also very good at answering minion generation decks in general.
And he had the stabilizing to handle the go big decks like the green halves in Ryan or Greg's deck. But if, again, it has a lot to do with people's collection level, because we're talking about world champs here. So if I had the option to choose a deck that's rolled with 3 or 4 the best answers, or 3 or 4 the best proactive cards, I will choose proactive. I would rather not be trying to answer my opponent. I'd rather be trying to win. And so do we know that those collections exist in that fashion? Not necessarily. Maybe there is a deck out there that's rolled 5 or 6 best answers, so then the best proactive deck is only rolled 4. Then you'd rather have the 5 or 6 answers. But if we're talking about, like, even power level between proactive and reactive decks, I'm going to choose proactive.
Sure. Well, let's add some fuel to this fire here a little bit. Greg was kind enough to showcase the results from the UK Ultimate Championship top 8. And there were 3 Necreum half decks, 3 Tempest half decks, 5 Utera half decks, and 5 Aloyan half decks. So a pretty even spread in the UK.
That's a very like even meta,
right? And the winner was a Necrium Tempest. So we saw Necrium still come out on top, which I think that doesn't surprise anybody when we talked about all the stuff the Necrium's doing. The Tempest side is, considering there were 5 Uteras and 5 Aloyans, the odds were more in favor of Utera. If green purple was the best, and we think it's the best always, I don't know the quality of those 5 Utera halves. I want to be really clear. I'm just talking about it in generalities here. Then Utera had the better chance of being the second half deck there, right?
Do we know if that winner was a Rumble Darkheart? Because it's those colors.
No, it was set 1.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure all the decks were set 1.
I don't think they have set 2 yet.
Yeah, I think they were potentially selling set 2 at the event, but I don't believe anybody had it in their collection prepped for the event.
Yeah, so I think it's very interesting to see that emerge out of the UK Ultimate Championships. It, of course, as Blightwitch, Commanding Banshee, Darkheart, Indomitable Fiend, Raging Stitcher, and Stout Slime were the key cards from the Necrium side. All very powerful cards. Had Seriously Skull, Infernal Ritual, and Omnom as well in the spell suite. And now I'm sure we'll get the 10-piece half here as well.
Big fan of Commanding Banshee.
Yeah,
agreed.
Super good card.
Also, side note, recently played a deck. I played it, and I played against one that had Tormenting Banshee, and that feels great because you get to kill a minion, and then you get to deal damage to them because you've killed a minion. Yep. So that's another good one.
Commanding Banshee, I'm just going to put it up on screen for those folks that don't know it, is when an enemy creature is destroyed by this, deal 3 damage, which is the Banshee ability, but it has deploy, give your zombies +1/+1, +3/+3, or +6/+6 at level.
And yeah, Fizzlesticks, you did that with a Nyx Nikia, where they were planting zombie brutes left and right. So you would do that, use the Forgeborn abilities to get the brutes out, and then you play the Commanding Banshee and just buff them all up a lot.
The 10-piece side of this was Chaining Sentinel, Freezing Omni, Reckless Stonefist, Steadfast Glider, Summoning Stormling, Uranti Elementalist, Yeti Warcaller, Conflagrate, Ice Storm, and Staff of Eris. So, I mean, that's a stout red, right? Like, I mean, when you look at what you want, obviously Omni might be the least powerful card here.
Interesting that it only has 6 spells.
Yeah.
That was brought up previously, that like for spell slinging deck, it only has 6 spells.
And that was played by Cameron Montgomery. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate the info on that while we're live.
I mean, they're all good spells, right? They're just
that's the thing. Every one of them is.
I just feel like you're gonna miss on your Elementalist or your Chaining Sentinel or your Blightwitch like at least once during the course of the game.
Which I think is okay.
Right.
Honestly, I've played some spell slinging decks that have 10, 11, 12 spells. A handful of all spells with nothing to interact with.
That sounds like it's too many, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. So
what does
Freezing Omni
do? Might be a little light, but 10 I think is too strong. You know, that 7, 8 area is probably the sweet spot, but
yeah.
All right, Neil. Freezing Omni is ready this when you play Ice Storm.
Right. And then what does it tap to do though?
Just the same thing as any other Omni. So to activate
it just
pings
for damage.
4 damage.
1 damage to your enemy's board, 2 damage to the enemy board, and does it scale linearly to 3? That's 4. I don't know, but
it goes to 4.
It goes to 4. Okay, so 1, 2, 4.
You get 2, 6, 5, 9, and 9, 13 on the Freezing Omni.
Interesting. That one's okay, I guess.
I actually
think
this
leads
is
to a lot of board wipes if you do it in the same turn as playing
Ice Storm. Oh yeah, for sure. If you have the Ice Storm, but I've played. I mean, I have a Sparking Omni deck that's pretty decent, and I think I've only been able to reactivate the Sparking Omni twice in like 10 games. You know, it's just getting both of those cards in hand at the same time, and because you can't hold a card, like you can't go, oh, I'm going to hold my Sparking Omni until I draw my Lightning Spark, or in this case, the Ice Storm. You're going to miss it more than you're going to hit it. It's not consistent in that respect.
No, I played it with Betrayer Lightning Sparks even. And getting it to fire in that sense is even tough. You know, it's not a guaranteed every game by any stretch of the imagination, especially because a lot of the Omnis are lightning rods for removal.
Right.
So
absolutely.
odds are they're going to be answered pretty quick.
I mean, and that's, I mean, I think of the different omnis, freezing is probably the second best one. I still think sparking is the best one. So freezing is still very, very good. But I think
what's the other one that's not the armor one?
Disintegrating.
Disintegrating
straight to a player only.
I think disintegrating stats are the best.
It is.
That's hard to tell. I guess half of the top 8 was Terra Ovoyan. Courses. Blue green.
Yeah.
I wonder if they were replacement strategies.
Yeah, I
or
mean,
if they were minion strategies or both, I guess.
I think it's just interesting because that's such a different meta than what we've been talking about for a while now, right? And Joel's success at the last Shuffle Bus also sort of says maybe we don't have this figured out yet.
Well, I hate to just kind of like put a potato in the tailpipe here, but finding out that this tournament was only set 1 kind of makes it not very important to the meta.
Yeah, but set 2 has arguably not had a huge impact on competitive metas, right? Like we've not seen a really backbreaking set 2 half deck, right?
I mean, I guess the Creech brothers
they're both playing set 1
are all
decks,
set
right?
1 decks.
Yeah.
I know that.
So the existence of set 2 really doesn't matter there.
At Indy, I'm trying to remember. It was Eric and Steven were the other 2 people that made top cut.
Greg's saying wasn't top 4 at Indy all set 1 as well. I'm fairly certain it was. I think there was only
that's what I'm trying to remember because Steven was
decks.
playing the red purple that was like triple shambler burn spells.
Yeah.
That one was spicy.
Yeah.
And that
deck was cool.
And Greg adds the second deck at UK Nationals was a Tempe Aloyan piloted by Bruce Lafferty. And so Tempe Aloyan is just at the surface the same as what Joel did.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm just
I
throwing.
agree with you. It sounds like it's like the reverse of what we've been seeing here. Anyway.
I'm just throwing a monkey wrench out there, right? Maybe it's possible that the UK player base that participated doesn't have a collection deep enough to find these really powerful Utera Necranium decks yet, but it just seems like that's unlikely. It seems like they're playing a different game. Now, whether it's a better game, I don't know.
How much time difference was there between our release of set 1 and theirs?
It was significant.
Yeah. So think of where our meta was 6 or 9 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say it was at least 4 to 5 months different.
Yeah, it's probably right around there. They got their set 1 like 2 weeks before we got set 2.
Because I remember, and this was before I was playing, so this was all hearsay, mostly from Shadow, that at the time that we started covering the game, which would have been about 6 months ago or whatever, maybe a little more, that the majority of the silver decks at that time, the decks that were like doing well, were red purple, like which would
they were
match
Tempest
up.
at least. Thundersword was the most prevalent card that was silvered.
Interesting. There's no Thundersword in this deck.
No. So again, I'm inevitably, like, here's the deal. Like, UK players are going to look at our metas, right? They're going to look at our metas, and that's what they're going to try to, if they're competitive minded, they're going to hunt those certain sets of those cards out, right, in their own collections. So they're going to look for the Blight Witches. They're going to look for the Omnoms or whatever they think is prevalent or seen as potentially powerful synergies. So I don't know. Again, I think it's an interesting conversation because I think as much as we want to say blue, purple and green is the meta, and it has been arguably, no doubt. I'm not saying the results don't speak for themselves. There certainly seems to be at least a little bit of an inkling that the door is open to other possibilities, and I wonder if that's going to happen at World Champions.
I think I'm probably wrong.
Whoa! Wait a minute! Somebody's clip that for me, please, because I need that. I'm going to put that on loop.
Yeah, he's going to take it out of context here, where I correct myself so that I'm right. But maybe the set 2 thing isn't as important as just the amount of time that we've had the cards.
Sure.
And like, it's it's so hard to tell, right? Because I'm making all these assumptions about a thing I know nothing about because I don't live in England.
Sure.
But did we have international players travel to this, or were they all?
No, they were all local
locals?
to the UK. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% local.
Well, I don't mean local to the UK. Did they travel from around the UK? Like
yes. Yes.
Okay.
I believe there was some Irish or Scottish people that decided to travel over. So
it wasn't
like Rory.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like Rory.
Because this is something that I have no experience with because I didn't play Keyforge. So I don't know how to evaluate a sample size accurately. Because obviously when we're talking about Indy and Denver, we're having people travel further than you could possibly travel in the UK to get there. Even if you were like, as far away as you could possibly be in the UK, you're still not as far away as maybe even you were, Cody, from Denver. And
that's probably accurate. Yeah.
And because of the amount of time that we have had the cards here in the States extra, and I assume that equates to a significant amount of extra product opened, I would make the assumption that the collection level of players in the United States is higher than the collection level of those in the UK. That doesn't mean that we're better players than them necessarily, just that, like what Jesse said, where this smattering of decks that is in this top 8 looks like to me, kind of what our meta looked like however many months ago. And I will be interested to see how it changes when they get their set too.
I think a good example of this would be go look at the top 8 from the Kickstarter backer tournament.
Ooh, yeah.
Because if I remember correctly, the winner was Tempest Aloyan Mages.
Okay.
And there was a really good mix of decks in there. I was playing an Army Commander, Krogius, Darkheart Sorcerer, kind of free spells, life gain mixed in their deck. But there's a huge mix of different strategies inside of that tournament. And just looking at some of the tidbits that Core put in there, it feels like this UK Games tournament was very similar to that Kickstarter backer tournament.
He said it had 28 players.
Yep.
That's crazy. I retract all my nonsense. Like with 28 players, this has to be a very reasonable sample size.
It's a good sample size, yeah, but I think it could be. I
think
all of your points are valid for how long they've had the game. I think that's 100% valid.
You just think it's a knowledge thing.
Not even. I think
it's a collection level thing. It's just we've opened 10 times, 50 times the product that they have as well. I mean, I use the country as like the amount, but that's not really accurate. It's like say the 28 players at UK games thing is their community, and ours is the roughly 20 players that attended like either Denver or Indy. The amount of access to product that our group has had compared to theirs is, I mean, it must be 10 times more, maybe more.
Well, I just think in general, like I've talked to people that in other markets that are marketing products internationally, both at a UK level. In fact, it is they're a UK based company. This is a single example, but it might have some relevancy here, just from a small sample size perspective. They flat out talk about the US market is so much larger that the number of people in the United States of America as a market is so much larger that their sales are like 3 times as much in the United States than they are in the UK. And so it's very possible that even with time, the UK market would never match that, because there's just a density of players that's going to be higher in the United States no matter what. So the amount of product that is open here and the collections that are passed around through eBay and things like that is going to be a higher tier potentially than what would happen over there. But I will say this, with all of that said, some of the best players in the world in card games have come out of the UK in other games, right?
I agree. So, it has nothing to do with player skill. That's not what what I was talking about. It's simply just access to cards, which in a game that is not produced like Solforge or Keyforge, then if you're a European player, you can just have whatever cards you want in your deck. And but it's interesting. Like, I mean, that red purple deck seems like it's pretty good. I feel like it needs an additional spell, but I don't know what. Maybe we will see some crossover of those players in the League of Champions, of the American players and the UK players.
Well, I mean, and look, well, obviously we'll know in 2 months. But to me, it's interesting. It's interesting because the results we're starting to see come in, and they are small, like no doubt. Like, I mean, 28 players is a big tournament, no doubt, but we don't have a large quantity of events coming in that are of this size to sort of pull more data from and see trends. And again, we're not talking about specific cards or specific half deck strategies or anything like that. We're just simply talking faction colors, right? Which is distilled down to the most simple version of it. But when you talk about faction colors, you're getting into certain strategies or synergies that each faction does well, right? One does better than another. So long story short, I mean, obviously I think it's going to be exciting to watch it play out. I am not ready to put all my money on a green purple winning world championship. That's what I would say if I was going to have to gamble on it. If I was giving odds, I would give the most favorable odds to green purple, but I would still believe that there are some incentivizing odds to gambling on a purple red or a purple blue red as a potential winner here in those scenarios. So, guys, we are at the 2-hour mark already.
Ooh,
it goes fast.
Already.
It goes fast, man. I'm telling you. We're gonna have to do this again because we didn't even touch I think a third of what you guys laid out on us. When you said the show schedule over, I was like, oh, we're never gonna get to half of that. I know what's gonna happen here, but this has been, an absolute blast to have you guys on the show with us tonight, and I hope we can do it more often because I think it's been a lot of fun, and I want to tell you just thank you for the content you put out. You guys are doing an awesome job. Keep that up. Because Neil and I are just a bunch of lazy bums that just do the live stream stuff. So we don't have any real strategy behind this. We just come on here and blabber around for a couple of hours. But we will definitely be seeing you in Gen Con here in August. So we'll have to get together and just compare some notes from World Championships and talk about things, and we'll go from there. So you guys have any final thoughts before we wrap up tonight?
I need Cody to tell me why it's okay that Sonic Burst is one-sided.
Why does Cody need to tell you that?
What do you mean one-sided?
It says only opponents. That just is the strangest design choice to me.
Well, you don't want to destroy your own creatures.
It would be still really good if it was a wrath, if it was Firestorm or whatever. They obviously have examples of things that are quote unquote symmetrical in Firestorm and Epidemic.
I need you to not make Aloyan cards worse.
Yes,
I need you to not do that for me. I
just told you it'd still be really good. You don't think that card would be good?
I think it'd be worse.
Well, obviously it's worse.
Right. That's the end of my argument right there. It doesn't. Hey, bigger questions to ask, okay, are why does player armor not exist in a wider array other than just one random, couple random force abilities? Yeah. Why is life gain so prevalent and I can't give myself armor? These are bigger questions to ask than why is Sonic Burst not worse than it is, even though it's not played right now?
Cody, you're doing a great job wrapping up this show by opening up a whole nother can of worms.
I was asked a question and I'm going to answer it. Darn it.
You were asked a question and you're going to ask additional questions.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, let's
it's just so weird to me.
Let's side table
like that card specifically, because I screwed up so many times on stream and on coverage, like not knowing what the hell that card did, because it didn't make sense to me. I kept saying like, oh well, it does, like it kills this guy and not this guy, and he's like, nope, it kills all these guys. So I'm like, what? It hits 8? Like this doesn't make sense. And I'm like, okay, well, and then we were analyzing a board state of Joel's, and I'm like, well, if he plays Sonic Burster, it's going to kill 2 of his guys. So it's just like a 2 for 2. And they're like, no, it only hits your opponent's guys. And I'm like,
yeah,
I have no idea what this card does, and I don't know why.
All right. Well, let's. I think we can definitely table the armor to players question, because I do think it's an unexplored design space. I hope they consider exploring it more. But let's wrap up tonight with just the fact that this has been maybe one of the most fun streams I've had outside of when we do live coverage for games. So I just want to thank you guys for being here with us and for gracing us with your elevated value, because we we just don't have that same level. So you guys are super awesome, and the community needs to know everything about it. Jurch, do you want to let everybody know where they can find your guys' content if they're not aware?
Oh man, well, first of all, I would like to ask a bunch more questions and try to make this go another 2 hours. I guess that's the in thing to do, is just completely disregard.
You guys can stay on the Zoom call. I'm going to hit the end stream button, and you guys can talk all you want.
I think that RuneScarred Pit is the best comment in set 2.
Anyways, Neil, Jesse, you guys are great. The stuff that you put out, I love the conversational, the back and forth. It's something that my brain, if I was like in charge of it, my brain wouldn't be able to handle and make the coherent and depth of conversation that you guys have. So I love what you put out, and love just kind of listening to it every week. And the fact that now we can kind of collaborate and you have us on it, this is great. Like all of these content creators feel different needs in the larger community. So there's nobody is better or worse than anybody else in that respect, or like, because there are things that we obviously do a lot differently and worse, but just don't like kind of sell yourself short. You guys are doing great stuff too.
Well,
so I love it.
I would call me and Jesse out as tier 2 content creators, because I saw on YouTube today, Grandfather put out a new short promoting content creators in the game, and we were the only one not on the list.
Oh no!
It was literally everyone, even Ryan,
who hasn't put a video out in 3 months. Just saying. I'm kidding, Ryan. If you're here, just make more content, Ryan. We want more of the Forgeborn finishing school. So no, it was funny. I was like, whatever. I don't care. It was we will just live in our little live stream bubble. It's all good.
Yeah, and I swear it didn't damage me internally.
He's gonna take a cold shower after this.
You're wiping a bunch of tears from your face, Neil.
Oh, I got it. I'm good.
Onk says that was from 2 months ago. It just came up on
not sure why you reposted
my YouTube today.
Got it. All right. Well, guys, again, thank you so much. Let's do this sooner rather than later, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
And best of luck, Cody, to you and your store championship coming up.
Oh, thank
here.
you.
Hope you get that sweet coin. That way Jurch can't hold that over your head for too long.
Yeah, I'm gonna shamble my way to that next tournament. No problem.
Yeah, perfect. All right, guys. Thank you so much. This has been the Shuffle Bus and the Charge Plated podcast combined tonight. We will see you all on Saturday. Not even next Wednesday. We're going to be back online on Saturday for the SEAL tournament. So start live stream coverage right around 11 o'clock in the morning Central Time, and wrap up when the tournament is done. So thank you so much. We'll see you all Saturday. Have a great rest of your week. Take care, everybody.